Namita Datta, and I'm program head of solutions for youth employment. It's a global program based in the World Bank that focuses on youth employment. And we have a large number of partners, NGOs, foundations, private companies, um, of, and young people themselves, and of course, a large number of World Bank teams that work on youth employment. And almost every month we get together and we particularly focus. In S4Y, our focus is always on solutions, and number two, on the practical design of programs. Um, so every month we get together and we shine the spotlight on a particular challenge that we all face, and get into actually some solutions that are being implemented on ground, how well they are working, what are the problems they are facing, because of course these are challenging problems to solve. Um, so the topic for today, I'm so delighted that we are talking about this actually, because over COVID, during COVID, we heard so many of our partners say that they have very quickly adapted their learning programs, their training programs in terms of how they were mentoring young people, and they've moved to online, and they've solved part of the problem by moving to online. But a lot of them also shared their very serious concern that by shifting to online, were they really completely missing out a large chunk of the population? Because a lot of the population simply doesn't have access to the internet. And even if they do, the bandwidth is so low, the electricity, there's a problem. Some of them don't have proper devices. So by quickly pivoting to online learning, are we going to end up actually exacerbating the digital divide into further enhancing the learning divide and the way people learn or even access education or access jobs or transition into the labor market? But it's very heartening also to see how people were thinking about this and how several organizations were thinking about solutions to overcome that problem. So I'm so delighted that today we'll talk about three such solutions, and we have a wonderful panelist, and they're all going to share things that they are doing to particularly overcome this. And one of the things they're working on, they're all working on how can we use text messages or SMS messages to actually reach people who are in low bandwidth areas. It's not easy, and the first question that comes to my mind is, really, can you really teach somebody over a text message? And how much can you teach, and how deep can you go on certain themes? Um, and so those questions remain in my mind, and I think our partners struggle with those questions themselves too. And in some cases, they're still beginning that journey and they're still learning. Um, so I'm so delighted that we have five actually wonderful panelists today. So I'm going to introduce them and then hand it over. So Anne Sawyer, thank you, Anne, for joining. She works with Ernst& Young, and she will share with us a recent initiative they've launched, particularly on entrepreneurial skills, and they've worked in Nigeria and Venezuela, if I'm not mistaken. So Anne will share that. Claire Mungo, who's CEO and co-founder of MShul, who focus their work quite a bit. They focus quite a bit of their work on Africa, again, challenging environment to work in. And then Gavin Veal, who's founder and CEO of Dignify Africa, and Livon Rivers, who's innovation lead, again, with Digify, sorry. Digify, but also Dignify. So it's a Freudian slip. Africa. And both of them will talk about, so they both will talk about the same thing, but they will focus on something quite interesting in terms of using WhatsApp to deliver learning. So really looking forward to that. And then I want to also introduce my colleague, Alex Twinomugisha, who is Senior Education Technology Specialist. He's the guru of everything tech when it comes to education. And so Alex will share with us his perspective on what we are learning in the bank with some of these new innovations. So I'm going to keep quiet now and then hand it over to you. So uh, each of you have about 7 to 10 minutes, and I think Gavin, between you and Livon, you'll split those 10 minutes because you're both from the same organization. So over to you, Anne. Let's kick this off. Can't hear you, Anne. You're
We
muted.
cannot hear you.
Okay, I think I got it now. And hopefully you can see my screen too. We good? Great.
Perfect.
Excellent. Well, thanks everyone. Really appreciate the introduction as well. Namita, it was just such a pleasure meeting you through the Alliance for Youth. And this idea really originated in part there. So my colleague Nish Pangali and I, she works at SAP, I work at EY, we were leading a task force around digital inclusion. And similar to a lot of the points that Namita was making, we thought it was just so important to be providing, lowering barriers to access to technology. So many people don't have access to Wi-Fi, never mind a computer. So we had a number of different modules and content that could be delivered in person, but we wanted to really make it something that was much more accessible. Around the same time, we were introduced to a vendor called Arist, who I met at a business plan competition, and they're really an expert in text message learning. So together with SAP, we took our content that was originally intended for in-person learning or to be read and turned it into a text-based learning program. So it's just really exciting that we already had this content, but obviously needed support turning it into modules that would be relevant to be sort of taken via text message. So I'll share a little bit more about our journey, but as of now, we have about over 9,000 young people who have completed both the courses. So EY had a course around entrepreneurship, and then SAP had a course around design thinking. And hopefully I will move to this next slide somewhat. So the way it works is, first, it's really important for the country to think about the age requirements. There are different sort of legal aspects around people providing their phone numbers or WhatsApp numbers. So just really need to be careful around that. So the way it typically works, at least in our company, is that if a country wanted to pursue this, they would do some legal research around the age requirements and also think about the language requirements as well. Arist, the vendor we were working with, would then advertise the course on social media for that country. The student would see the course and then those that were interested would sign up, only providing their mobile number. And then students would receive text or SMS or WhatsApp, depending on their preference, and start the text-based course. And then Arist would share the results back with us. And we can also do this through a nonprofit. So we could also provide a link for a nonprofit to distribute. Just to be really candid, we've been focusing more on the standard process to the left and less on the working through nonprofits. But that's something that we hope to enact in the future. And our results to date, we have over 9,000 course completions, as I shared. The average completion rate is around 50%. And something that Arist shared with us is that they were finding people either start it and complete it 100%, or they take half a course or one course and then drop out. So in general, we're actually pleased with this completion rate of 50%. I mean, more would be better, but it was actually higher than we were expecting. We really just ran this as a pilot and have been really pleased with the results. The course ratings have been high. We originally started this in Nigeria, the Philippines, Nigeria, the Philippines, and Venezuela, and then we've since added more countries to this. And we have had a number of small case studies done, as you can see to the right. So in general, it's been a successful pilot. That said, we are sort of trying to determine, the best next steps, how we can potentially engage with students more. At this point, once they finish the course, our engagement ends. So we are looking to find new ways of engaging, or different ways of engaging with them, or potentially a continuation of courses. But pleased with the pilot, pleased that we're reaching students that are in rural areas, or that we might otherwise be able to be in touch with. But so we're still trying to determine, where this can go. And we think we're just sort of in early days of reaching the potential of it. So I'll pause now for any questions.
And I just want to encourage people to just put questions in chat. I just had a quick question, and I want to ask if anybody else, although usually we'll keep it towards the end for questions. But and you didn't mention what you're teaching. You didn't mention the content.
Yeah, so we're teaching content on entrepreneurship, as well as design thinking. So each of the courses, they, at least on the EY side, they were previously delivered in about 45-minute in-person sort of engaged delivery. We then transitioned it into text messages. So it's 8 different modules that are taken. So it's 8 different series of text message that is taken over the course of the course. So I want to say, just to give you a sense of it, it's about 16 pages of text on a PDF, lots of emojis. That was just a bit of a getting used to take our sort of more formal communication and then having it with a lot of emojis. But it actually, as someone who's taken the course, it actually, the emojis do provide, I think, some motivation and make it a little bit more informal in a good way.
There's a question that just came up. Since you finished a bit before your allocated time, I just asked you the questions that people are putting right there. Maybe you can see it yourself. So there's a question about teacher engagement. How do you engage teachers to be able to push up the completion rate?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I would say that that's something we're thinking about in the future. We do have a collaboration with Teach for All throughout the world in over 20 countries. So it's something that we might sort of work with them on. But this, just to be really candid, this was just an initial pilot. So I think we're just scratching the surface of the opportunities that we could have. And I'm happy to monitor the chat and move on to the next person if you prefer that.
And then another question that just came in for you is, do you give an incentive for people to finish their course?
The short answer is no. I think that like right now we don't have any sort of like certificate. I think that that's something that the students would like. But as of now, there is no incentive that we're giving.
And then there's another question, and this is what you get for finishing early, for not using your allocated time. You get the questions right away. So you mentioned, so this from Eric, you mentioned advertising over social media as a low, sorry, my computer. Yeah, did you consider radio? That's a good question. Did you consider radio or other low tech ways of getting the word out there?
Yeah, we have considered radio and TV. We're working with Teach Nigeria, and they have some sort of radio school that we're supporting them with. So yes, certainly did consider radio and TV. And I mean, I think this text message program is just one of many mediums that could support people and sort of, with, who are struggle to have Wi-Fi or struggle to have devices. But I think radio and TV are great ways as well.
But you didn't really, you considered it, but you didn't use it. Is what you're saying?
We, yeah, I would say that we didn't, we considered it, and then we sort of had been introduced to Arist and just had a pathway forward to that. But we're really thrilled to be working with Teach for Nigeria and radio. In their radio school. So we do still think there's a huge opportunity in radio. It just, we sort of had a vendor that sort of came to us. So it just sort of worked out for us to do the text-based learning, and has been a successful pilot.
Okay, one last, and then I think we'll move on to Claire. But one of my colleagues, Sunwa, wants to know, do you know why the other 50% didn't finish? Like you get into reasons?
We don't, like, as I mentioned before, like there's a pretty high, like people either take one course and stop it or continue. I think I think Aris has tried to do some surveys in the past, but we don't have the reasons why. And that might be something that we want to explore. I think one of the things we do have to be careful of is avoid sort of spamming people, like they're giving us their phone number specifically for this course. So I think we want to limit the amount of interaction that we have with them, since they only signed up for the course, not to be spammed with surveys. So we just need to be mindful of that.
And you're just starting out, I guess.
Exactly. Yeah, we originally started actually even a smaller pilot. We've expanded it to have more learners, but still, we just launched this in May. So I'm excited to hear firsthand from the other panelists, because I'm sure they have a lot to share as well. But again, from an early pilot, we're really pleased, and I think we're just in the beginning of our journey.
I'm going to hand it over to you, Claire, for you to share what MSchul is doing in this space.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I hope everyone can hear me.
Perfect. Loud and clear.
Okay, incredible. So I am just going to share a presentation as well. Hopefully I'm sharing. Can this be seen? Is it full screen? Okay, great.
It's not full screen, but I can see it. It's kind of odd. It's just showing half. Yeah, there you go.
Okay, it's larger now. Okay, great. We all know how technology is, even when we're all running tech companies. So hi, everyone. My name is Claire Manjo. I am the CEO and co-founder of MSchule, which means mobile school in Swahili. And I'm really excited to be here on this panel today with so many others who have been trying to solve, who are working on solving the same problem we are. We actually began in 2017 thinking about how we could provide personal, accessible, and affordable learning and training opportunities to the offline mass market in East Africa. And so I'm excited to share with you a little bit more about why we started doing that so early, even before the pandemic, and what we've learned throughout the pandemic, and hope to learn from all of us together. We know that there are more than 400 million children and youth in sub-Saharan Africa, and the majority of them are coming from families that are low income. And even before the coronavirus, 87% of those learners were already in learning poverty. And when COVID hit, when the rest of the world was moving online to using personalized the learning websites that were already available, or even Zoom classes, the majority of the population, especially in Kenya, where we're based, didn't have access to reliable internet connectivity or smartphones. In fact, 80% of the population doesn't have that access. So what are scalable and cost-effective ways to continue to improve those skills by using the devices already in people's hands? Well, I think we all know that SMS is truly a powerful answer. So MSchule helps organizations and schools educate, evaluate, activate, and monitor offline learners all through SMS. And we have an artificially intelligent platform that helps tailor content based on how learners are actually performing and how they need to build mastery, all the way from academic to life and livelihood skills. So I think many of us here today know the answer to this question, but how can you learn anything over SMS? And I actually saw one of the questions in the chat: how can you condense such rich content down into a single text message? Well, if you think about it, we actually learn over SMS all the time through chat-based interactions. And so similarly, by asking questions, getting answers from learners, and then sending additional content back based on how they answer, you can actually drive a lot of strong impacts, as we've heard, and what we will hear, by personalizing interactive lesson content to the learners. So we have designed, again, a platform that delivers SMS micro courses for learners of all ages using this interactive chatbot type of approach. And now my computer is refusing to move forward. There we go. How exactly does it work? So we have a team that first takes program or curriculum content Everything from literacy and numeracy content that's aligned with the school curriculum, all the way to advocacy content, entrepreneurship content, financial literacy content, content that has been traditionally delivered in a workshop, classroom, or in-person setting. And we map out all the topics and skills that are meant to be covered through a particular course. So after we map out those topics and skills, we can actually create mini content databases or chains of messages that can guide learners through gaining those topics and skills in a very efficient manner, usually about 10 minutes per lesson. And as you can see in this example, learners will receive little instructions or storytelling messages that moves into multiple choice questions or open-ended questions that can help them practice what they've learned. So after we adapt all this lesson content and upload the coursework into our content management platform, learners can actually start engaging with it at home on their phones or on their parents' phones. And this was something that was, of course, very powerful during COVID when schools were closed for many months on end. And a lot of learners, again, of all ages, often didn't have the time or the financial resources to be able to go to cyber cafes or to buy additional textbooks or to print out materials to help them learn at home. So through this approach, they actually didn't have to spend any airtime or use any data, but were able to interact with this content that was able to allow them to either maintain some of the classwork that they were doing or learn additional skills like how to start a small business that could actually support them through the pandemic. And so the cool thing about this is not only are we sending out this content to the learners, but we're actually tracking their performance and progress in real time. So from the back end, we keep track of how many students are enrolled, how they're performing per topic and per question, and how their progression through the course content is. So now schools, organizations, all the way down to individual teachers and classrooms can actually see in real time how each individual learner is doing and follow up with them either remotely or now that we're hopefully getting back to classrooms or to training centers in the classroom to help them better tailor the resources that they're receiving, the additional resources they're receiving to improve their mastery. So we really see that our superpowers are the fact that we are accessible and equitable for all households and turning the small Kibambe or small basic phone into a mini computer for learners of all ages to engage in. It's affordable for learners and organizations. And we also provide that personalized learning that has been proven to drive significant more impacts and engagement in other medium in a more accessible way. So briefly, we can have learners sign up individually, or sometimes organizations can sign them up as a cohort. So we found during COVID, a lot of organizations that used to provide in-person workshops were able to partner with us so that they can continue their work even remotely, which I'll talk about in a second. In the past 5 years, we found that this approach really does work, which we'll also hear from the other panelists. We've reached more than 25,000 households across Kenya, and next year we'll be expanding to Tanzania and Uganda at least. And this is in urban, peri-urban, and rural areas, even in arid and semi-arid regions. We've been able to send now almost 2 million learning messages, and we're able to deploy content across multiple languages, so we can deliver content in the language that learners are most comfortable with. And finally, and most excitingly, in one of our most recent studies, we found that in early grade literacy, learners who were taking part in our platform were able to reach a greater level of mastery in the same, 1.5 times higher than non-users. So we're seeing that this approach actually does work in improving skill mastery, which is very exciting. In terms of actually non-academic skills, we partnered with VSO International as another example. During COVID, we were able to adopt 6 of their courses like entrepreneurship and financial literacy, social accountability, and self-confidence into a 6-month-long program. And we found that by delivering them to out-of-school youth, these users were able to apply their knowledge to their lives and even launch successful small businesses that they were able to maintain throughout COVID. This was really driven by creating peer learning groups and also providing certificates at the end of each course to incentivize the learning. So back to that question on incentives, if we are happy to share how we also do things like build better community building throughout SMS learning as well. Finally, this is very briefly our team. Myself and my co-founder have been here from the beginning, and I am coming in with past business and project management expertise. My co-founder is in charge of all of our products, and we have an incredible team, some of whom I think are on this call, who are doing all of the incredible learning design, customer experience, and user support work to make all of these incredible impacts happen. And with that, I will end. I hope I didn't go too much over time, but we're really, really excited to be here and learn more about how we can all collaborate, because accessible technology should be available to everyone. And there's a lot of people who need easy ways or in easy to use ways to gain skills throughout this pandemic. So we're excited to collaborate. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. That was super interesting and clearly quite impactful in terms of just increasing access. Just two quick questions. One is, did the teachers need an internet and a computer to follow at the back end a student's progress? And secondly, did you find that there was a difference in learning between whatever regular phones and smartphones? Did you, and who pays for these services?
Oh, great questions. So for now, actually, we were able to support the teachers if what we found is a lot of the teachers that we worked with actually did have, they would have smartphones, but were not necessarily super comfortable with navigating to different websites online. So we'd actually send out WhatsApp reports or WhatsApp screenshots of how their students were performing. So they were able to access it pretty easily and use that information to be able to support their learners. Sometimes even phone calls, to be honest, because being able to talk through teachers in this difficult time, we all needed a little bit more human interaction. So in the future, this would probably be something that's also consolidated at like a head teacher level, so that because again, they're more likely to have at least a computer or a smartphone, so they can support the teachers. The second question, I remember the last question was, who pays for this? So the way that we've structured our platform is individual learners, if they're not part of a program or a school that's signing up, can get some content for free. So we have a freemium model, which they pay nothing. There's no SMS charges and no airtime required for them to send or receive messages. So they could just participate in a little bit of content for free. If they want to get more content, they can pay a small subscription fee per month, less than $1 maybe, or 100 shillings. And again, that doesn't require any airtime or SMS charges for them. And that's to make it even more accessible to everyone, right? We don't want learners to be penalized if they need more content or need more messages to be able to get to understand a concept. If we're working with an organization or a school or a program, those organizations can actually fully sponsor and support their learners to engage in the platform. And then they also get access to the data and the reporting on the back end. And then we can also take care or support them in adapting their content into an SMS interface. And I'm sorry, I forgot the middle question, Meetha. Do you mind repeating that?
Yeah, that was just about whether you see differences between people who have smartphones and others. There are
Yes.
learning.
That's a great question. I'll say that we haven't necessarily tracked that so much to date. I think that's something that we'll have to include in our tracking in this year. But what I will say is that what we have found in the market research we've done in the lower income communities that we work in is as soon as an individual family gets a smartphone, the first apps that they download are WhatsApp and Facebook Messenger. So the chat-based interaction is something that people are very familiar with. And so what we try to do is make sure that we're making the content as familiar and as user-friendly as possible. So it doesn't require a lot of, okay, I have to press different buttons or navigate in a certain way that's unusual for me. So, for example, if we're sending out a message and we want them to select a multiple choice, we do like ABCD or 1 2 3 4, not a weird long code, because that's most similar to mobile money interactions, for example. But now that we're doing more, actually, we have a Telegram and a WhatsApp bot in the works, so I'll have better information for you hopefully this time next year.
Thank you, Claire, and we'll come back to more questions. I just want to move. We'll have time in the end, hopefully, for more interaction. I'll move on to Gavin, who'll talk to us about Digify Africa.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Excellent. I am very delighted to be here. I'm co-presenting with my colleague Lev, who's going to share his screen and operate the slides, and then we're going to do a little demo in the middle as well. So Lev, if you can fire up the Prezzo. So I'm the CEO and founder of Digify Africa, and we are a social enterprise based in South Africa, but operating across the African continent since 2011, so for the last 10 years. Our main focus is on digital skills for unemployed youth. And so we've run a variety of programs around this across the continent. Next slide, please, Lev. But in 2019, we actually built our first prototype of a WhatsApp learning chatbot for our own purposes, really, because we were trying to find a solution for delivering our digital skills programs to low-income youth. And we felt like WhatsApp was the key to this. It's the app, as has just been mentioned, that is on most people's phones, so there's no download barrier. It's very familiar and free and cheap to use. And so in 2020, when COVID hit, we really accelerated this push to see how we could build learning where the user did not have to leave the WhatsApp environment, because we felt that would be the most accessible, low data usage, cost-effective solution for the kind of youth we want to get to. So for the last 18 months, we have been building bots. So we still feel like we are in an early-ish stage, working with our partners at Meta, formerly known as Facebook. And we've built 3 key bots, which we're going to talk about today. And they're designed to be personalized and interactive experiences. And what we pride ourselves on so far, I think, is that we've managed to build a pretty sophisticated user experience entirely within the WhatsApp environment, pushing the functionality that's available with things like dynamic menus, gamification, and keyword recognition. And trying to make it easy to navigate and just overall a decent experience. Next slide, please, Lev. So I'm going to just briefly introduce you to 3 bots before we show you an example. So Naledi, we launched over a year ago in partnership with Meta, and this was intended to help young entrepreneurs learn about how to use Facebook platforms to grow their businesses. So it's digital marketing content aimed at entrepreneurs. And this was our first full bot where we launched the kind of core functionality we've been playing with, which is kind of rich content using every sort of media source that's available within WhatsApp, but with very restricted video, of course, because that's the expensive one. Introducing quizzes, adding interactive elements with study groups, a gamification layer using badges and leaderboards to encourage that engagement without the sort of straightforward sort of incentivization. And then at the back end, having a system that's kind of measures via analytics and displays on the dashboards to help us and the user understand their learning experience. We've also been looking at, we've been partnering with UNISA, a large educational establishment in South Africa, to now take that into the research space and really understand how these edtech and mobile learning experiences can scale. So Naledi actually won a couple of awards this year in the advertising industry, which we were very proud of, and was a good start to our kind of chatbot ecosystem. But then the next one we launched was Lesedi. So again, we personalized the experience in terms of the user, coming up with a persona that would be the face of each chatbot. So Lesedi we built as part of the Chat for Impact program that WhatsApp ran earlier this year, which we participated in with 9 other organizations around the world. And we built a bot that was going to be introducing digital literacy to people who, you know, maybe hadn't used their phones for accessing the internet, or really realized the full potential of what your phone could do in terms of improving your life. So we built this one in about 6 weeks, and it's really content-wise contains kind of basic skills of banking and you know, accessing government services, how to browse effectively, you know, things on safety. So the real basics. And then at the end of all the modules, you get a certificate. So in terms of incentivization, I guess we're using kind of softer incentivization and hoping that this kind of learning can be added to job applications and CVs. So Lesedi was the first one that really kind of scaled in terms of you know, its reach and its traction. And so since September, we've had 900,000 messages being sent on that bot, 11,000 registered learners, completing almost 9,000 topics of content. And this is just the early stages of that bot. And then our most recent, if you can go on to the next slide, is Kidso. This is also in partnership with Meta. And this is related to a campaign we run in South Africa, trying to help 13 to 19-year-olds learn about internet safety and staying safe and resilient online. And so we built a bot to support that campaign, but this is specifically aimed at educators. So the idea is that we would create a chatbot for educators across South Africa that would give them the basics of this curriculum that we'd built and we're delivering to teachers and to young people offline. And with a partnership with the Department of Basic Education, we've managed to kind of get this out to thousands of teachers across the country. And this has been our most has gained the most traction so far. I'll talk about the numbers in a second, but I just wanted to hand over to Lev quickly to show you how the bots look and operate.
Cool. Thanks, Gav. Can you guys hear me? Awesome.
Yep.
All right. So we've done the tell part of it. So let's just do a quick little bit of a show. So I'm going to switch to WhatsApp and hope that nobody else messages me while I'm presenting here. If it does, don't look at that. But I've already started just to show you a little bit about how it actually works here. So here's an interaction with Kidso. It's taking users through a very basic registration process where we can just get a little bit of information about them to ensure that we can chat to them personally, ensuring that they can opt in so that we can contact them in the future. And then we head into our main menus, where we always try and make this as almost reusable as possible so that learners can always come back to the main menu and then head off to different parts from here. What Gavin was talking about was our different UX approaches. So you'll see that we trial quite a bit of text-based approach, you know, like where you reply with text. We've also got buttons where you can reply easily with the button. And we've then got the new menus, which are quite new to WhatsApp. So as an example, if I just pop onto Lesedi, you'll see that on the main menu over here, we can very easily go into different areas of the bot. So it's quite a rich user experience and something that I think you know, just adds a little bit to the entire process. Over here, I just want to show you a little bit about how the learners actually learn. So once they've gone into the learning menu, they can choose the area or the topic that they want to focus on. and it will then run through a series of content that they can experience. So we've got, as you can see, we've got images, we've got text, we've got audio notes, and all of these have a very particular use depending on the type of message that we're trying to get across. We do try and use audio notes quite a bit for more in-depth training, and then we normally end off with an infographic or something like that, which the learner can then keep on their phone for later use. And we also make sure that we keep these almost topics to about 5 minutes of content. After that, they can then decide if they want to carry on learning or if they want to go back to the main menu and look at something else. Another cool thing, just to quickly show you. So let's see over here. We also have our quizzes, which obviously then the users can go through in terms of a multiple choice fashion. And they can then check on that afterwards in their progress in terms of a little progress meter, as well as then go on and see their actual, how they're working out on the leaderboard against other people. So we've really tried to think of as many ways that we can keep the system gamified and also ensure that the UX experience for the user is really something special. I know we don't have a lot of time, so I'm going to stop over here and go back to Gav. But we will share these with you so that you guys can try out the bots in your own time. Cool.
Thanks,
All right,
Lev.
back to you.
Yeah, so underlying this is a sort of a product that we're developing that will hopefully allow other organizations to be able to come and build their own learning chatbots with things like the functionality that we've been building, like quiz builders and leaderboards, etc. And we really feel like we're just at the beginning of this in terms of what we can do with WhatsApp. But the traction this year has been really fantastic. And overall, with those 3 bots, we've had almost 60,000 learners register, over 12 million messages sent, and 130,000 topics completed. And the vast majority of that has only been in the last 6 to 8 weeks. So we've really managed to sort of get the traction going after a few experiments. And then the next slide is just touching on, well, where do we see the future? So Meta have also launched another bot called the WhatsApp Business Coach, which is a tool for entrepreneurs in Africa and beyond. So that's also worth checking out. But the work of the other people in this, in this panel is really making us excited about this kind of approach as a catalyst for change, because we feel like it's very, very scalable. It's something that can reach millions of young people across the continent. So we're looking at this as a tool we're going to use across all of our programs. Next year is going to be about what new functionality, improving the UX, how we can build community into this, M&E tools, which we think it could be very powerful in terms of tracking impact and the better gamification, and things like human escalation and multiple languages. And the vision overall is that this can become a kind of end-to-end learning management system where you could manage, deliver content and track users and the impact of your learning on them. So yeah, I think I will pause there because we have run out of time. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Gavin. That was really very interesting, particularly how you've condensed it to just a few minutes and made it quite user-friendly. There are a few questions for you, but I'm going to come back to it. I want to hand it over now to my colleague Alex, and then we'll open it up for more questions. There are some for you in the chat. Alex?
Thank you, Namita, and great to hear from all the wonderful innovations that have just been presented. I don't have slides. I'm just going to have a quick reflection on this whole topic. I recall at the beginning of the pandemic, we were being asked, what technology should we use by colleagues in the bank, by people in this space, and there was a lot of talk of radio, TV, online. This is late March last year. And one of my colleagues, Mike Trukano, who is a true tech guru, has this great saying that the best technology to use is the technology you already have. right? That you already know how to use and that you can afford. And when we actually look at the numbers in terms of, what technology is most widely available, especially in low and middle income countries, it's the mobile phone. Right? And I somehow feel that we were kind of led to really push the boundaries of what the mobile phone could do in the pandemic. Recently, I read a very interesting article from the UN Girls Education Initiative that said that, opined that perhaps WhatsApp is the unspoken hero of remote learning in the pandemic, which, if you think about it, is probably true. I mean, in virtually every country, right? During the pandemic, there have been WhatsApp groups to support teachers, to support students, to support parents. I mean, it is so big. And, some of the things that, Digify is doing, that some of the other presenters have talked about, I mean, the possibilities are really interesting. I think beyond just delivering content, there's also assessing learning, right? So even people who had radio, TV, mostly radio and TV, how would you tell that the children are actually learning, right? Many of them were complementing that assessment bit with mobile phones. I think supporting teacher training, supporting coaching teachers was huge during the pandemic. And I hope that that's something that can continue. Providing guidance to parents, guardians, and caregivers was a big thing. And again, I hope that's one of the key lessons of the pandemic, that parents are really integral to learning and that we have to involve them in some way. And some of these text-based solutions can support learning by supporting parents and caregivers. And there's very interesting stuff around parental nudges projects, for instance, in Ghana. We saw the use of SMS and WhatsApp and other text-based messaging apps for social emotional support. We forget that social emotional support is a key part of supporting children to learn. But we've seen a number of examples around the world of social emotional support. And we've even seen examples of managing the whole education system or SMS-based data collection for education management information systems. So I think that SMS and these text-based things have a big role to play now and going forward. Let me share two quick examples of the work we are doing at the bank. One is, our assessment team at the bank has been looking at using mobile phone, and these are feature phone based technologies to assess remote learning. And there are a number of reports that will be coming out. I'll drop a few links in the chat as soon as I'm done. But those we could share with you once they are ready. But there's very interesting examples around the world during COVID of assessing learning. And I think Claire and the Digify colleagues have also talked a little bit about that. The other is also a very interesting report worth reading, was done by the EdTech Hub, which is a collaboration between the bank, FCDO, the Gates Foundation, and UNICEF. It was a rapid evidence review of messaging apps, and probably one of the most comprehensive kind of reviews on the impact of using messaging apps. Also very, very interesting, and I'll share a link to that report. And finally, kind of reflecting on the future, there is, people have had say that, and debates, well, really, can you learn using text messages? Should we really all move to an adaptive learning, online rich environment? And I think that question was asked in the chat here, right? It is a question on many people's mind if you've never really interacted with these technologies. I believe that chat-based interaction is here to stay. And that young people are very, very comfortable with this sort of chat-based interaction. The tools are becoming more powerful. I think we're likely to see a transition, more from pure SMS to more low bandwidth applications such as WhatsApp and other Telegram and all these other solutions. We are likely to, as smartphones become much cheaper, and the price of smartphones is dropping. Actually, Claire, in Kenya, I believe today there are more smartphones sold than feature phones, right? So the trajectory is clearly in the direction of smartphones, pretty much in every country. And so, and the combination of some of these technologies with artificial intelligence, like that powers things like chatbots, I think offers incredibly exciting opportunities for low bandwidth. And a lot of the smartphone providers are beginning to introduce technology on the smartphone for onboard AI processing. So you don't actually have to rely on a cloud-based service to do a lot of the processing. All that's, I think, very, very interesting and portends a very rich future for this. I'll leave the panelists with a question, which is, I haven't had any of you talk about working with government, right? And I'm very curious, at some point, you have to partner with government if you really want to go to scale. You're doing some really good things, I think, which could benefit all children. It's pretty difficult to do it without partnerships. And I know sometimes it's very hard to work with some of these governments, but any thoughts you may have on public-private partnerships? The bank has great convening power, and we work with governments. It will be interesting to hear your thoughts about that. And Namita, thanks very much for inviting me to be part of this very wonderful panel. Over.
Thanks a lot, Alex. And I think, yeah, I had exactly that question in my mind for the open discussion. But before I go back to the panel, Alex, from our work in the bank, what might be a few countries that come to mind where you think that the government is either already done or has really a lot of appetite to scale this in the way they do education, where they're actively thinking? Are there some countries that are sort of ahead of the game on this?
Yes, so Pakistan, there's a lot of interesting work going on at the federal level and in several states in Pakistan. There is a quite famous COVID example in Botswana, where it was shown that delivery of lessons via SMS complemented with voice on feature phones. And assessment was quite impactful compared to the children who didn't have this solution. In Edo State in Nigeria, the Edo Best at Home program has deployed WhatsApp quite successfully. There's projects in Ghana that are using SMS and WhatsApp. So there's several countries where we see increasing use of SMS. Sometimes it's not just to deliver education. Sometimes it's to, let's say, engage parents. I mentioned this parental nudge program in Ghana. Sometimes it's for social-emotional support for children. Lots of work going on around teacher support. And I'll actually drop a link here. We did run a competition, a global competition for innovations on teacher support and teacher training. And we got a lot of SMS, WhatsApp-based type solutions around the world. And I'll also drop that link in the chat for to see. Over.
Thanks so much, Alex. And just for everyone, we'll share after the webinar, we'll share a recording of the webinar. We'll share the slides that the presenters presented, and we'll also share the resources and the reports that Alex referred to. So That's fantastic. We have like 5 minutes, and I know that, and there are some questions which are to all the panelists, but I know we didn't get to Gavin. But to all panelists, well, if you want to think about, the one question is, of course, Alex, the question to you, like, are you exploring this? Because really the pathway to scale is through the government, frankly. You really want numbers that and transformational impact, and that's the instrument. And there's sort of an open sort of invitation from us and from Alex's team that we would love to explore it together. That's one. And secondly, there was also a question on how you are thinking about disability, people with disabilities. We've done some specific work on how this whole digital technology can change the level playing field, can level the playing field for people with disabilities through assistive technology, innovations that are coming up. And I wonder if any of you incorporated that or are working on it. So that's to all, but particularly some questions to Gavin. I'll go to Gavin first. Then there's a question about whether the bots drawing are the bots drawing of true machine learning, or is it mostly pre-programmed keyword searches where you look for certain words to dictate the next response? And then there's another question asking you about reporting and how you support the learners. And then another question is how do you make sure people find out about these courses? So what is your outreach strategy?
I can talk about those, but Gav, I think if you could start with the question on governments, I think that's very important for everyone to hear.
Just very quickly, and it does touch on the marketing question as well, because I think that to get to the scale, the marketing funnel towards these applications is crucial. We have managed to get a partnership going with the Department of Basic Education in South Africa, and actually it's been incredibly fruitful, even though it took a long time to get going. And they are now assisting us reaching all teachers in South Africa with our Kitso bot, which is getting incredible traction. So I agree. I mean, it's not something we've had great success with partnering with government over the last 10 years, but this year we have really managed to make that work. And so we're looking to escalate that with, and it's the perfect kind of marketing partner for this kind of thing. So yeah, totally agreed. Lev, do you want to answer the other ones quickly? I know we've only got 2 minutes.
Just a quick one on the machine learning or AI question. So we've actually purposefully gone a totally different route on this. We're viewing our bots as almost mini websites. So everything is very much menu based, and we're trying to rather use that because it's such a complex thing that we're trying to teach everyone, I guess. I feel that when you go more machine learning based, where it's more just looking for keywords and all that, it's a little bit too loose for where we are at the moment. In the future, the plan is to combine both of those approaches so that you can either use menus or we'll have an intelligent enough system that that keywords will actually be very useful. And yeah, so that's kind of where we are at that on the moment. In terms of the reporting, so we obviously have quite a bit of, a ton of data and dashboards that we use, but and we share that with our partners like the Department of Basic Education at a very high level. But for the learners themselves, they've got access to their own mini dashboard where they can then check how many topics they've done, what their marks were for each of those quizzes at the end of the topics, as well as the badges and the certificates that they get from there. So I think that's all that we have for the learners at the moment. I can't remember the third question now. I don't know. Do we have time? What was the third question there?
I think you answered them all.
Okay.
I think you answered them all. We just have like 1 minute left, and I also wanted to highlight that my colleague Victoria, who heads the Skills Global Solutions Group here at the World Bank, she's also shared a resource which we will include in our email to all of you. Is that the bank has developed some remote formative assessment using basic mobile technologies, and that resource is a global public good. Anybody can access it. And then there's a question about privacy, but I don't think we are going to be able to get to it. This was a very, very fascinating topic. You can see there's a lot of excitement, and I'm sure a lot of people already wrote to us saying, will you please share the recording? I can't make it this time, but I want to see what's out there and what the panelists brought in. So we'll share this widely. And I just want to say a big thank you to you all for joining us very much. Anne, Claire, Gavin, Levon, and Alex. I think this was a really interesting discussion, but much more. I think in a few months, if we were to get together, a lot more would have happened. This is rapidly changing. So thank you all and have a good rest of your day.
Thank you.